Hello, Diana. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good. So, what are you in for? What's been going on with you lately?
Well, I've been having several things go on. I've been feeling down in the dumps lately. I've been tired all the time and just wanted to sleep, lay in bed, not want to get out of bed. And I don't really enjoy doing any of the things I used to enjoy doing. I used to like to go hiking and ride my horse, and now I just don't care. I just don't want to do any of those things. And I've been having problems at work. I can't concentrate on my work, and I can't remember things like I used to, and it's affecting my work. And so I was hoping you could help me figure out what was going on.
Well, just from a description of your symptoms, it sounds like you may be having some depression. I can pretty much diagnose that by you telling me how you're feeling from day to day, but since you're here, we're going to do a physical exam and make sure everything's okay there. But do you have a family history of depression that you know of?
Well, yeah, it seems like I recall that long ago my mom did have some depression and was treated for it when she was younger.
And how long have you been having these feelings?
Probably several months I've been feeling like this.
Okay, that does sound like depression to me. So I can explain to you what's causing your depression and we can discuss some treatment options.
Okay, that would be really nice.
So if you'll help me hold this board that we've got. So depression can be caused by a deficiency in a neurotransmitter. And a neurotransmitter is a chemical messenger in the body that transports signals from the nervous system from neuron to neuron and throughout the body. So these neurotransmitters that we've got here are called the catecholamines, and they're serotonin, dopamine, and epinephrine. And usually these are the ones, if you're deficient in these, you may suffer from depression. And we don't really know which one could be causing your depression, so we kind of have to play around with them to help you get to feeling better. But dopamine is actually a precursor to making epinephrine. So we're going to talk about the dopamine, because if we can increase that, it'll also increase the epinephrine. So dopamine, if people who have plenty of dopamine in their body, it controls the brain activity that is responsible for love and pleasure and motivation, and it also helps control metabolism, and it helps release stored energy in your body. So that can explain why you're having some of the symptoms. You don't feel as much pleasure for things that you used to, and you don't feel like you have as much energy, you're tired. So that's what makes me think that it may be a deficiency in dopamine. So what we're looking at is, this is a dopaminergic neuron, which means it's a neuron in the body that's going to release the neurotransmitter dopamine. And this is the postsynaptic neuron that the dopamine should bind to. So where we start is we have tyrosine, which is going to come in from the diet. It's an amino acid. You'll get it from things that you eat. And then there's an enzyme called tyrosine hydroxylase, and it converts it to a medium called L-DOPA. And then L-DOPA, there's an enzyme called dopa decarboxylase that converts it to dopamine. That's where we get the dopamine from, which is the neurotransmitter. And it's stored in this little thing called the synaptic vesicle, which is in the axon of this neuron. And it's going to come down and release the dopamine into this area. The space between the two neurons is called the synaptic cleft. And then what we want to happen with the dopamine is for it to bind to the dopamine receptors on the next neuron, and it'll cause this neuron to fire, which is going to cause the response in your body that we're looking for to improve how you're feeling. So other things that can happen to the dopamine is these COMT and MAO are what we call degrading enzymes. And if the dopamine comes and binds to them, it'll be destroyed. So there'll be less dopamine to bind to the receptors, and the response won't happen. Also, the dopamine can bind to a receptor on the neuron that just released it, And this is called reuptake because it's gonna come back into the same neuron, and therefore there'll be less dopamine to bind to the receptors on this neuron to cause the response. And also, dopamine can diffuse out of the synaptic cleft, and if it does that, it will be destroyed by other cells in the body called glial cells. So with depression, basically you don't have enough dopamine in this space binding to the dopamine receptors, so the response isn't happening. So we need to increase the dopamine. And we have several medications that can help us do that. We have one that we give a drug that mimics dopamine, and the drug comes in and acts like dopamine would and binds to the receptors, and that's going to cause the response. We have another drug that we can actually use to turn off the degrading enzymes, so they're not going to be working, they're not going to be destroying the dopamine, which means there'll be more dopamine in the space and more available to bind to the receptors. And another medication can actually turn off the reuptake mechanism, and this will also lead to more dopamine in the space, which is what we want, so it can bind to the receptors. And we can use one of these medications for you, or a combination of them maybe, to increase the dopamine. And another thing that you can do is increase the tyrosine in your diet, because if you do that, more tyrosine there'll be able to be more dopamine made and more to be released and bind to the receptors. And tyrosine-rich foods include avocados, almonds, bananas, meats, dairy products, lima beans, sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds. So if you like any of those foods, it would be a good idea to eat more of those to help with what you're experiencing. So we're going to get you straightened away with one of the medicines I discussed to try to increase the dopamine, and also you can eat more tyrosine-rich foods. So do you have any questions about what I've explained? I've been talking a lot.
No, that was really nice to have it explained, and I understand that. So I appreciate you explaining it to me.
Well, you're very welcome. We'll get your medication straightened away, and hopefully the dopamine was the problem, and we'll get you feeling better. But we'll see you again in a little while, and if that didn't help, we may target one of the other neurotransmitters that we talked about to try to solve the problem.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was good to see you.
Okay, thank you.